Hey, this is Zachlog the Great, and I am here tonight with Nate
Hi again.
and Travis,
Hello.
and we are getting together tonight to talk about G.K. Chesterton's poem, "Love's Trappist." Um, and before we get going any further, I did want to mention for those who have been watching my channel for a while, for those who enjoy my videos in general, I did just start a subscribe star page. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, let's get the lights. There we go. Looks a little better. I did just start a subscribe star page. So if you like what I'm doing, if you'd like to see more of it, if you'd like to support me, be a part of it, please consider going to subscribestar.com/Zachlog hyphen the hyphen great and becoming a subscriber there. And that said, okay, and this is I will say before we go any further, kind of like what would be a footnote if this were a book. For those who are not familiar with such things, the Trappists are a an order of Catholic monks who take a vow of silence, and that is a very important bit of context for this poem. So, having said that, Travis, would you like to start us off tonight?
Sure, I can do that. I guess I don't really know where to start as far as discussing it, but
Well, I mean, what are your initial thoughts? What's your first impressions?
um, honestly, the thoughts that I had after reading it the first time were I've sort of gotten away from reading poetry so much, except that I do read some poetry, but I just read it for the sound. So it's more like a bedtime story. I read it and let the rhythms go, and then I just pull out images that connect with me. Um, so I can say that the image that jumped out of this poem at me was where tablets stand wiped naked for a token, and
Okay.
that stuck out to me as a sort of a stark image. But I mean, in general, the poem, I mean, it's quite interesting. I guess the one interesting thing is he says, he's this Trappist monk who can't talk about love, and then he goes on to talk about how great love is and that the world has never seen anything like it.
Well, but the thing is,
He's not the monk yet. He's going into the cloister, but
yeah,
he's
there.
not there yet, and so that's why he's like, he and what stood out to me about it is that he's yelling back over the threshold before he's taking his vow. Hey guys, it's great in here. I can't explain why or how. Just please, you need to come. And I'll get more on that when I'm through interrupting you. Sorry.
Oh no, that's fine. I'm glad you did.
Well, and the other thing with that, if you look at the last stanza where he does say something about it, he doesn't give any kind of description. He doesn't give any kind of details. He just says like the best things haven't really been talked about. You don't like the things the little bit you've heard isn't really the stuff that matters. Which I and so he says something, but he doesn't like there. It's not like
No,
he's
I
not giving a
know,
detailed report.
but it's still saying something. And even his description of there is a place where lute and lyre are broken, where scrolls are torn and on a wild wind go. Like that's all describing this place that he's going. This
Uh,
threshold that he's crossing. Like this play, if I understand correctly, that first stanza, he's talking about this place of love that he's stepping into.
right, and well, and what is you know what he means when he says lute and lyre are broken and scrolls are torn. I mean,
Tell me.
well, Well, I mean, he is saying this is a place of silence. This is a place that's not that people aren't you aren't hearing about this because lute and lyre are both musical instruments.
Right.
Scrolls and tablets are both places people are for people to write. So there's no it's radio silence would be the phrase today. And what was the last line in there deviates a little bit from that, and I think I get it, although I'm not 100% sure. And so like the first stanza is just saying this is a place that you're not going to hear out of.
So when you say the line that deviates, you're speaking about the daisies grow?
Where laurels wither and the daisies grow, and that one to me is not as obvious, but I think I understand it, but it's not as clear to me as the other two, and it's not as clearly on quite the same theme. So.
But aren't laurels? Isn't that the winners wore on their head?
Right,
in the
and so
Olympics?
laurels are symbolic of victory or triumph or glory,
Pride or glory.
and daisies, because I actually looked up like some of the symbolism associated with different flowers, and daisies are more of innocence, and so he's saying like it's not a place of pride or triumph. It's a place of calm innocence or peace. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
And that's, like I said, that's where I'm going with this whole thing, is that really what he's talking about is a departure from, or at least in my mind, is a departure from bachelorhood. Right? Because you think about it, and he's like, it's difficult a lot of times for married men to hang out with bachelors because, one, their wives don't trust it. Two, hey, I said, and two, you find out that you have less and less in common with your unmarried brethren. You're like, guys, look, y'all are awesome, but I really actually want to go home. I want to hang out with my wife. I want to spend time with this creature who has brought, such, such revelation and illumination to my purpose in life. I mean, as a young man, as a bachelor, you're like, well, I have some things I need to do. This is what a man should do. But once you once you fall into love and you exercise true love and you bond with it for life, it changes who you are and it changes your priorities. And so that's sort of this, this cloistered place that, all these young men know about. They're like, that's the, the place where you go in and you never come back. I've lost a lot of good drinking bros there. It's kind of, it sounds formidable, right? You're like, oh man, you go in there, you can't talk, you can't, go sing your bar songs anymore. You can't holler at the women. It's silence. It's terrible. But once you get there, you realize that, it's really a wonderful place. It's a place where you can be nurtured and developed. Is the reason that monks were cloistered is so that they could develop their spirituality. And the Trappist, I believe, gave their vow of silence so that their voices wouldn't interfere with the voice of God. So, I mean, like I said, it's all about growing and becoming better. And so this place, where the laurel withers and, the daisies grow is, you're not out there for glory anymore, and you're not there fighting the fight, for yourself. You're living in the peace of a loving home. I mean, that's the thing I value the most anymore is peace in my home. If I can come home to a place where I'm not going to be, judged or, evaluated. I'm just loved. I mean, I have responsibilities, sure, but in the end, it's all born and it's all carried over in love. And that's the reason that he's looking, he steps across the threshold, takes a look around, and real quick, before he becomes unknowable, he turns around and hollers out to everybody that's watching, guys, it's great in here. I can't even describe how, because it wouldn't even sound right to you. Just for God's sake, get in here when you can. And that's the whole thing in my nutshell, anyway.
Well, Travis, were you gonna?
I was going to say, did either of you have any thoughts on the line, "For man through love's gate, even as through death's gate, goeth alone and comes not back again"?
Well, there's one thing. One thing with that is I'm pretty sure this was intentional. There's one other obvious place I know of where love and death are paired together in literature, and that is in Song of Songs or Song of Solomon, and love is as strong as death. And I hadn't
at the grave. It doesn't
I
burn
hadn't
with fire, and many waters will not quench love.
I hadn't thought about that part too much before, and it is kind of odd because it seems like you should say, well, you're going with this other person. I mean, isn't that kind of the entire point? So I don't know. I'll have to.
I disagree with that, actually. You don't actually go into love with another person. I mean, there's unrequited love, there's all this. You head toward love by yourself, and what you're hoping is when you arrive there, once you've passed beyond the veil, as it were, you're hoping the other person meets you there, and then you continue on from that point together.
Yeah, and there's
I guess. Go ahead, Sean.
Well, I was just gonna say, actually, the reason I was interested in this poem, the reason I picked this one for my for the Valentine's Day love poem. There's a YouTube channel I listen to a good bit. It's Stefan Molyneux. I don't know if either of you are familiar with him. And he doesn't do it as much now, but he had a kind of call-in show where he deal with all kind of questions, some abstract philosophical, some about people's personal lives. And one question he would frequently ask people who were in some kind of in a romantic relationship, especially when it's like this isn't working, like there are serious problems here, and he would ask them like, what drew you to this person? Why do you love this person? And the really weird thing for me, and what the kind of the meaning I kind of attached to this poem, I would have had a much easier time answering that question about my wife 8 or 9 years ago. Or even 10 years ago, about the time we got married. Whereas today, like if someone asked me that and I wasn't expecting it.
Wait, you what exactly?
If someone asked you like, what drew you to this person? What do you love about this person? And today, if someone were to ask me that and I weren't expecting it, and I wasn't prepared for it, I would probably just. I would almost be in a kind of a stunned silence, because when you first fall in love with somebody, it's easy to explain everything. Like, it's this about her and this about her and this other thing about her, and when we do this together. But when from my experience anyway, when you've been with this person for almost a decade, it's like, well, why do you like having her? It's like, well, why do I like having my right hand? It's like I like,
it really is on that level.
This is not like it's I can't articulate that. It's just a part of me.
Right. No, I mean that makes sense.
And so I kind of that's how I kind of see this, that when you are when you are in that kind of thing, like that's a tough question that's a tough question to answer for me, and it's not because I don't love her. It's because I don't know I don't know how to explain it. It's just this is my life. This is what this is the this is a foundational part of my life now, and if she were gone, my life would just it wouldn't make sense. Like you take out all the practical issues, which are an enormous thing in and of themselves, but you take out all the practical issues, it just wouldn't make sense anymore. And I can't articulate much more than that. Or at least, like, anything else I try to say feels like this kind of silly scratching at the surface. It's not, it doesn't get to the things that matter, and I can't get to the things that matter. And I think I've been ranting for a while, so I'll stop now.
Ranting has such a negative connotation. You've been giving an impassioned speech.
That too, sure.
Bit of a monologue, as it were.
It probably had a positive connotation once upon a time. We should bring it back.
But anyway, that's why I chose this poem. That's why I like this poem. So I don't know what Nate, does that seem familiar to you?
Yeah. I mean, I've tried to figure out how I would explain, the whole thing, and it's like, what attracted me to her? Well, she was interesting and beautiful. Not, and interesting, not in the least for her, not least of all because of her beauty. I was like, dang. All right, let's meet this girl. And then I was like, holy crap, she's got a personality. I think we're on a good founding here. And the more I got to know her, the more there was that I was interested in. And now we've been married for, God, 8 years. Shoot. Anyway, yeah, this will be 9 years this August. So
keep track of that, or else it might not continue.
It'll still go. She's addicted. But I mean, I can honestly say that without her, I would not be who I am today, and in all the ways that make me a crappier person. She is a challenge to me every day that, I have to be better than my baser self. I have to be better than who I am, instinctively, so that I can be worthy of, this blessing that God has given me. I mean, I'm like, I could not tell you what I did right to get such a blessing. So I have to imagine she did something terribly wrong to deal with such a penance as myself.
Isn't that the old joke of something about heaven? Someone in heaven, and they see. Oh, never mind. Do you have an idea what I'm talking about?
Yeah. And so I'm like, so yeah, I mean, I could list again a bunch of, logical reasons why, and, sort of, feelings and ideas. But in the end, it comes down to, like you said, she's a part of me. I mean, if you cut me in half from, from crown to taint, I'd be like, and pulled just one side and chunked it in the garbage, I would still be more whole than if you took my wife away from me. That's all there is to it. They are a good wife, as the Bible says, is a treasure. And it's not because, of any economic sense or any, physiological, sexual, any sense like that. They enrich your soul.
Well, and the other thing, and like I said earlier, like all this, you see all these, romantic movies and poetry and love songs, and all of that stuff is pretty much not all. The vast majority of that stuff is about like the first part, the falling in love.
Oh yeah, the chemical dependency part.
And the but like the last line says, the best have ne'er been told. And, this part that we're talking about right now, maybe not never, but it's not the part people talk about as much, nearly as much.
Well, yeah.
And
I said,
yeah.
everybody talks about the feelings. I'm going to tell you this. In love, the least part is the feelings. All right? I mean, yeah, I often feel love for my wife. I often go, oh, she's awesome. Like when I come home and there's cheesecake. I feel love for my wife. But I think the better part of it is the knowing of love. Because I know that when I have had a crap day, I've ignored her because I've been worried about work. I've done this, and then I come back to sanity and realize that, oh man, I've been being a jackass today. I know she still loves me. And I know that she's not going to quit on me just because one day she wakes up and doesn't feel it anymore. But there's often days that we wake up and we don't feel it. I mean, love is a decision and an action. It's not a feeling. Okay? They've done studies, all right? You can become infatuated with a person and your brain literally gets you addicted to them. Like it pumps you full of, oxytocin, dopamine, and all of that fun stuff. Just by clapping eyes on them, and you just literally get high on. Okay, and that's when everybody's like, "Oh man, I would burn down the world for you. I do. I can't live without you. I have to see you." Running on the airplanes, getting shot by the air marshals, all that stuff. Just because they're drug addled. Okay, that only lasts a couple of years, usually just long enough for you to get married, get settled in, and then realize, my God, this person snores. And I'm not talking about like little sounds when they breathe. They sound like a water buffalo that has like a toilet flapper caught in his throat. It's unbelievable. It's like they got a kazoo in each nostril that's blaring through a foghorn. Okay, my wife doesn't do that. But anyway, just to give a typical example, right? This person is annoying. This person can be immature. This person can be indecisive. All this person's little quirks, I was like, oh, before are now fatal flaws that are going to split our marriage in half because now I do not have, brain provided drug assistance to deal with them. Now I have to do it on grit and determination that, you know what? I said I love you. You're still the same person. You still have all the good traits I thought that I saw in you, although I may have magnified those a little bit on the influence of the drugs. But still, we're in this together. We need to stick together. And you'll find that intentional moving toward each other creates a much more fulfilling and lasting bond than, the chemical deluge of infatuation ever could.
And
third
then,
rant for me, Sean. I think I'm winning.
Well, and then there's the unfortunate phenomenon of the people who only ever who like think that first head rush, you know like you said, almost literally drug high, like that's what it's supposed to be all the time. And so when that goes away,
insane.
Well, and so the thing, when that goes away, they're like, oh, I guess I'm not in love anymore. I have to find someone new. And so they never get to anything else. They never stick with it long enough to find out what can be the next stage if you choose, if you will to do it, and if you're willing to take the action, if you're willing to put in the work to make it happen. And it's like, I mean, because it's very clear people there are people who think like that, and it's like you're missing so much, and it's like it's not like the first part's bad. The first part's fun. It's really fun, but it's not. It's certainly not all there is, and I, what we have now is it's better. And like the poem says, I can't tell you, I can't explain it. It's just, it's better.
Yep. You're a bachelor there, Travis?
I am a bachelor. Yeah, so while you guys have been waxing on the married love life, I don't know, this whole line about for man through love's gate, even as through death's gate goeth alone and comes not back again. Like I haven't quite pegged down what it is, but listening to you guys talk, I think what it may be is that you can't follow a friend to death. And so when your friend falls in love, you gave the perspective of the married man not being able to understand his bachelor friends. When the bachelor friend watches his friend fall in love and go down that path, the friend can't go with him. And yeah, he's not coming back, or at least not the same.
No. And that's the thing, that once you've been known like this, it's why you see even the people that suck at marriage and have been married like 5 times and are really a drag on the stats, they can't stop getting married because they're looking to try and find a way to prolong that connection. And so, yeah, really, once you get on the other side of that, there's really no going back to just being this sort of unattached person. You can do it for a little while, but I think honestly, you're always going to end up heading back in.
If it's any encouragement, by the way, Travis, C.S. Lewis didn't get married until he was like in his mid-50s. So he wasn't at your age. He was in pretty much your position. So, and
if you want to really want to be an applied troper, you could always try and like practice some wife husbandry, where you like find a girl who's about right, teach her to be the person you want her to be, and then marry her. Like Darcy.
What did you call it? Applied
Darcy
what?
From Pride and Prejudice.
Well,
what did you call it? Applied. You said
applied troper. Applied tropism.
Tropism.
Yeah, you take your fictional tropes and bear them out in real life. Wife husbandry. That's a funny trope.
The other thing with that, however, is and this is veering a little bit into politics, like
always do.
But like feminism and today's like economic incentives have really made it difficult to try to create and sustain these kind of relationships. I maybe someday I'll take a crack at it. I would like to see a science fiction short story that posits that feminism was actually a plot by some alien race to stop us from reproducing, or at least stop us from forming stable families, so that our children are all an emotional wreck, and they can conquer us easily when they come in, because the boys have no testosterone and the girls have no self-control. But
oh man, that would be an interesting one.
So, Travis, what else have you got on this one?
I don't know if I've got a lot else, except that The next to last line, it's just, I actually looked up to see if there was a synonym for questioners. I just didn't like that word. It just did not. I mean, it's a perfectly fine word, except it didn't fit with the rhythm and the sound of the rest of the line.
Hit me with that one again. I don't recall.
The line is prophets and sages, questioners and doubters. And when I read it this time, it actually doesn't sound too bad. But
well, and the other thing about that one, which is kind of interesting, it's prophets and sages, questioners and doubters, and so it's first supposed to be the people who have the answers, and then it's supposed to be the people who have the questions, and he's talking to like both groups or all four, but they're kind of parallelisms. He kind of renames each twice, and he says, trying to explain this to both groups. What is it? Isn't it? Oh crud! Was it Socrates? I think there was a saying. I think there was a. I'd have to. I want to see if I can find this. There was a quote from Socrates about like he's advice for young men. He says, "Oh, by all means, marry. If you find a good wife, you will be happy, and if you find a bad wife, you may become a philosopher."
Oh, that's pretty good.
Was he married? I wonder.
Yes.
Ouch.
Let's see. Yeah, it's okay. So it's
God dang, Miss Socrates. That's rough.
So yeah, Socrates. By all means, marry. If you get a good wife, you'll become happy. If you get a bad one, you'll become a philosopher.
That is the effect of suffering, I suppose.
Well, yeah, and the other,
deep thoughts are usually not prodded by leisure and peace.
The other thing, like Nate was saying earlier, if you have a good wife, it is, it's a benefit to a degree that you can't explain. On the other side of that, if you end up with a bad wife, or for women, if you end up with a bad husband, the kind and degree of problems that can inflict on your life is difficult to describe. So
better to live on the corner of a rooftop than in a mansion with a quarrelsome woman.
It sounds like a proverb.
Yes,
exactly that.
I couldn't locate it these days, but yes, I recognize it. So, well, I don't know. I feel like I've said most of what I have to say. Nate, you have anything else?
I will say this. The title of the poem and sort of the premise does betray that whole near bachelorhood, because he hasn't yet figured out that you're leaving one community behind, but now you're getting a whole nother group, right? You're gonna have the other married folks to associate with. So it's not like you're going into this land of silence. It's just that you're going to a place from which you cannot speak backwards. So it's more like you're heading into and the experiences you're going to get in that on the other side of that gate are vaster and grander than what awaits you on the inside of it. So honestly, it's less that you're going into cloister and more that you're coming out almost. Once you've been on the other side. I wish he had written a revision, or a reply to his earlier work and been like, as it happens, I was wrong that first time. I wasn't going into cloister to be isolated, just me and the love. I went to join a greater cloud of people, and we share this, vastly expanded scope of life and these new foci and, these new passions that don't await you where you came from, and so actually the world is bigger out here. Y'all are the ones that are, sort of walled in. So it's like I get I understand, intimately what the man is talking about, but I wish he had gone further later. I wish
Well,
there's, like a comparable follow on.
Well, this is from I got this from collected poems, and there are 5 or 10 others. I'm not sure how many off the top of my head that are listed under the category of love poems. So if you want to check that out on Gutenberg.org, you can look up G.K. Chesterton, and you can look up his collection of
Read
poems.
a whole lot of Frost on there.
Huh?
Read a whole lot of Robert Frost on there.
Oh, Robert Frost. Okay. I might have to check out some of his. There's probably some worth doing for this series, although he's probably still in copyright. Which I've done a few, but
maybe, I don't know.
Anyway,
what I can
Travis.
tell you is he's my favorite poet. That kind of like rueful pastoralism is amazing. Also, I got to say phrases like rueful pastoralism, which makes me sound like I actually am a literary sort of person.
Travis.
You say other things that make you sound like a literary person, Nate.
Well, he's been doing this for a while. We've been going for most of a year now. There's he's been in on probably 15 or 16 of these with 2 English majors. So even though he was not one himself, he's been picking up some things, I would guess.
I went through a composition heavy thing. I wasn't an English major, but I majored in math comm, so I got kind of the working English major.
What was it again?
News writing.
Oh, okay.
Yes, he is of the honorable Well, he was educated for the honorable profession of journalism.
And then it fell on its sword shortly thereafter, and I've kind of not wanted to go back to it.
Oh. Yes. Anyway, Travis, did you?
So while Nate was talking there, I was looking back at the first stanza, and it just occurs to me, and maybe this is what it's always been, and you've always been talking about, but it's like this place that he's talking about. It's actually love.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so, I don't know, it's like as far like you're talking about communities or leaving this cloister for another cloister, but it's kind of like that old story of place where words fall away, and that's sort of where he's at, and it's made him silent in a sense, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. I just found a little bit more in the poem as I read it. Not that I'm doing a very good job of expressing it, but
that's why we let them write the poems and we just talk about them.
Yeah. So you don't write poems?
God, not that I'm gonna put out on the internet anymore. I'll say younger me was very proud of some things that I kind of hope sometimes nobody finds.
I've done a few. I've done a few of my own, and it's there's actually a couple. There's actually some things I wouldn't mind taking another crack at. But yeah. Okay. Well, it sounds like we've covered this one. So thank you guys for joining me. And I will hopefully be speaking with you again soon. Good night.
Night, y'all.
See ya.